Hello and welcome to Intelligent Pod, the show where we explore the science and stories behind what makes us human. I'm your host, Sophie Lane, and today we're diving into a topic that's as mysterious as it is essential to our lives: the neuroscience of creativity. Whether you're an artist, an engineer, a parent, or just someone who loves a good puzzle, creativity touches everything we do. But what's really happening inside our brains when we have that aha moment? How can we nurture our own creative spark? And is creativity something we're born with? Or can we actually train our brains to be more creative? If you've ever wondered how creativity works on a scientific level, or you felt stuck in a rut and wished you could unlock your inner genius, this episode is for you. We're going to break down the latest research, look at creativity through a few different lenses, and give you some practical strategies to boost your own creative thinking. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get curious together. Let's start by unpacking what we mean by creativity. It's a word we hear all the time, but it can be surprisingly hard to define. In psychological terms, creativity is generally described as the ability to produce something that is both novel and useful, or appropriate to the task at hand. So, it's not just about painting a picture or writing a poem. Creativity also shows up in everyday problem solving, in the way we organize our schedules, or even in how we cook dinner with whatever's left in the fridge. According to a 2016 Adobe study, 82% of people believe there is a strong connection between creativity and personal success, but only 39% of people describe themselves as creative. That's a huge gap. So, what's holding us back? Let's take a look at what's happening in our brains when we're being creative. For a long time, people thought creativity was a function of the right hemisphere of the brain, the so-called creative side, but current neuroscience tells us it's a lot more complicated than that. In fact, creativity involves a dynamic interplay between multiple regions of the brain. Recent studies using functional MRI, or fMRI, have identified three major brain networks involved in creative thinking: the default mode network, the executive control network, and the salience network. The default mode network is active when our minds are wandering or daydreaming. Think about those moments when you're in the shower and suddenly have a brilliant idea. The executive control network, on the other hand, helps us focus and evaluate ideas to see if they actually make sense. The salience network acts as a switchboard between these two, deciding which ideas are worth pursuing and when it's time to shift gears. So, creativity isn't just about letting your mind roam free. It's also about being able to evaluate and refine your ideas. That's why some of our most creative insights come when we alternate between relaxed, open thinking and more focused, critical analysis. It's a bit like jazz improvisation. You need both the freedom to explore and the discipline to bring it all together. Now, let's look at creativity from a psychological perspective. Psychologists have studied creativity for decades, and one of the classic experiments is the divergent thinking test, where people are asked to come up with as many uses as possible for a common object, say, a paperclip. Some people list 5 or 6 uses, while others rattle off 20 or more, including things like making a tiny sculpture or unlocking a door. What's interesting is that these kinds of tests don't just measure how many ideas you have, but also how original or unusual those ideas are. One well-known anecdote comes from the world of science. The story is Albert Einstein's thought experiments. Einstein was famous for imagining what it would be like to ride alongside a beam of light, or to fall freely through space. These vivid mental images helped him arrive at the theory of relativity, showing that creativity isn't just about art, it's also at the heart of scientific discovery. Now, let's dig into the cultural side of creativity. Different cultures view creativity in different ways. In Western societies, creativity is often seen as an individual trait, a mark of genius or talent. But in many Eastern cultures, creativity is more about collaboration and building on tradition. For example, in Japanese culture, the concept of kaizen emphasizes continuous improvement, where small, creative changes over time can lead to big innovations. This highlights that creativity doesn't have to mean reinventing the wheel. It can also be about looking at what's already there and finding new ways to use it. Let's bring in a bit of science. There's a fascinating study published in the Journal of Neuroscience in 2013 by neuroscientist Dr. Roger Beatty and his colleagues. They used fMRI scans to look at the brains of jazz musicians improvising music. What they found was that during improvisation, the musicians' brains showed increased connectivity between the default mode network and executive control network, suggesting a unique blend of spontaneous idea generation and focused attention. In other words, when we're being truly creative, our brains are literally jamming. Different regions are working together in harmony. But here's the million-dollar question. Is creativity something you're born with, or can you actually train your brain to be more creative? The good news is, research suggests that creativity is a skill that can be developed. In fact, studies have shown that engaging in creative activities like drawing, writing, or even just doodling can increase neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to form new connections. That means the more you practice being creative, the easier it gets. If you're thinking, well, I'm just not a creative person, let me challenge that assumption. Creativity isn't about being the next Picasso or Edison. It's about how you approach problems, generate ideas, and see connections that others might miss. And there are concrete things you can do to boost your creativity starting today. Let's talk about some actionable strategies. First, make time for daydreaming. It might sound counterintuitive, but unstructured time, like taking a walk, showering, or just staring out the window, lets your default mode network kick in, which is crucial for idea generation. So the next time you feel guilty for zoning out, remember, your brain is doing important creative work. Second, try to switch up your environment. Studies have shown that changing your surroundings, even just working in a different room, can boost creative thinking. If you're feeling stuck, try moving to a new spot, or even rearrange your workspace. Third, embrace constraints. It might seem like having unlimited options would make us more creative, but research shows that having some boundaries, like a limited budget or a tight deadline, can actually spark more innovative solutions. Think of it as a creative challenge rather than a limitation. Fourth, practice divergent thinking. Set a timer for 5 minutes and challenge yourself to come up with as many uses as possible for a common object, like that paperclip we mentioned earlier. Don't censor yourself and see how wild your ideas can get. This simple exercise can help train your brain to think outside the box. And finally, collaborate with others. Remember how we talked about cultural differences in creativity? Working with people who have different backgrounds and perspectives can lead to unexpected ideas and breakthroughs. So, reach out, brainstorm, and don't be afraid to build on someone else's idea. Let's recap what we've learned today. Creativity is a complex process that involves multiple regions of the brain working together. It's not just an inborn talent, but a skill that can be developed and strengthened. Whether you're daydreaming, problem-solving, or collaborating with others, your brain is capable of incredible creative feats. By making time for unstructured thinking, changing up your environment, embracing constraints, practicing divergent thinking, and collaborating, you can nurture your own creative spark, no matter where you're starting from. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a reflective thought. Think about a time when you surprised yourself with a creative solution. Maybe you came up with a new recipe, solved a tricky problem at work, or helped a friend in an unexpected way. That's your creative brain at work. Imagine what you could do if you made creativity a daily habit. Thank you so much for tuning in to Intelligent Pod. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. It really helps others discover the show. You can find show notes, links to the studies I mentioned, and more resources at intelligentpod.com. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, stories, or questions. Just email me at sophie@intelligentpod.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and I'll see you on the next episode.